Okay, so if you work with a financial advisor, or maybe you have a pension, or even just insurance, you're basically relying on this invisible system of rules, aren't you? To make sure the person you're dealing with is, competent and honest. Today, we're trying to pull back the curtain on that system a bit.
Yeah, get behind the scenes.
Exactly. We're looking at how financial regulation moves from, policy on paper to actual real-world consumer protection. And we're focusing specifically on the three pillars that govern how financial firms operate here in the UK.
That's right. And our mission here really is to analyze that whole life cycle of a regulated firm. We're digging into the foundational framework, mostly the Financial Services and Markets Act 2000, FSMAs we'll call it,
Right.
and how that sets up authorization, supervision, and enforcement. Understanding the sequence is, well, it's crucial because it's not just bureaucracy.
No, not just paperwork.
Definitely not. It's the whole infrastructure designed to uphold the integrity of the profession and ultimately protect you, the consumer, from failure and misconduct.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're aiming to give you that knowledge shortcut so you can understand how regulators, mainly the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, first filter out the unsuitable businesses.
The gatekeepers.
Yeah, then how they monitor what they're doing day to day, and finally, how they respond, decisively when rules get broken. It really does all start at the gate, doesn't it, if you can't get authorized?
They can't play. Simple as that.
Huh.
Before any firm can conduct any regulated financial activity in the UK, and the list is long, advising on investments, arranging insurance, managing assets, pensions,
All the key stuff.
all of it, that business must be authorized. And that permission comes from either the FCA or, for the bigger players, the Prudential Regulation Authority, the PRA.
So this authorization step, it's like the absolute first line of defense. Why is that strategically so vital?
Well, it's the regulator's main filtering mechanism, isn't it? It ensures consumers are, hopefully, only dealing with firms and individuals who've already passed checks for integrity, competence, and basic financial soundness.
Right.
By vetting them right at the start. The FCA aims to drastically cut the chances of fraud or mismanagement or misconduct happening down the line. It's about building that public trust from day one.
Making sure the people holding your money are actually viable.
And trustworthy, yeah.
Okay, but what if a firm thinks, we'll just skip that bit, carries out a regulated activity without getting permission?
Oh, that's extremely serious.
Wow.
It's actually a criminal offense under FSMA.
Wow, okay.
And maybe even more critical for the business itself, any contracts they enter into while they're unauthorized, they could be legally unenforceable.
So basically, their business could just collapse.
Exactly. They might face prosecution and find they can't even legally enforce their own agreements. It's a huge risk.
So given it's non-negotiable, how does the FCA decide? Who gets the green light? You mentioned these threshold conditions, the non-negotiable viability checklist. I like that.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, firms have to submit this really comprehensive application proving they meet all 5 conditions. You can kind of group them into, say, 3 main areas the regulator cares about.
Okay, what's the first area?
First is about control and location. So the firm needs to satisfy legal status and location. It's got to be UK-based, proper legal structure, all that.
Makes sense.
And linked right to that is effective supervision. The FCA has to be absolutely certain it can effectively oversee the firm's activities without, major hurdles if they can't watch you.
You don't get in. Got it. Needs that jurisdictional power. Okay, what about the second group? Sounds like money, financial stability.
It is. This covers appropriate resources. So the firm has to prove it has enough financial capital, to weather shocks, and also sufficient human resources, the right number of qualified staff to do the job properly.
So they won't just fold overnight.
Essentially, yes. The firm has resilience.
And the final condition, this feels maybe a bit more subjective, suitability. That's about integrity, character.
Absolutely. And you could argue this is the most critical one. The firm and its key people, they have to be fit and proper. It means showing integrity, competence, sound judgment.
Okay.
And the 5th condition, which sort of feeds into suitability, is the business model. The firm has to show its plan for operating is sound, and importantly, that it aligns with the FCA's overall objectives, like consumer protection.
So if your plan is basically make money by ripping people off.
That's a hard no. Yeah.
Right. Now, before we move on, we should probably clarify something about individual advisors. You mentioned two routes for them, which can be a bit confusing.
Ah, yes, that's crucial. An advisor can either be directly registered with the FCA, so they hold the full responsibility themselves,
Okay.
or they can operate as an appointed representative. You can think of it a bit like a franchise model.
Ah, right.
They work under the authorization umbrella of a principal firm, often called a network. The network technically holds the regulatory liability.
But the individual advisor still has to be up to scratch.
Oh, absolutely. They still have to meet the standards, and they're individually accountable for their conduct and the advice they give. It's just a structure that lets smaller advice firms operate without each one needing full direct authorization themselves. It centralizes some of that compliance burden.
Okay, so it's a really strong set of checks at the entrance, but like we said, getting authorized isn't the end of the story, is it? It's just the beginning.
Exactly.
Which brings us nicely to Pillar 2, supervision, the ongoing watch. Once the regulator lets you in, the scrutiny actually, well, continues, maybe even intensifies.
Yeah, the relationship definitely shifts. Supervision moves the focus from that one-off check at the start to continuous prevention. The FCA's goal during supervision is making sure firms don't just start compliant, but stay compliant
Keeping them on track.
and delivering positive, fair outcomes for consumers year in, year out.
And they don't watch everyone in exactly the same way, which makes sense. They use this risk-based model.
It has to be proportionate, right? Think about it. The massive, systemically important banks or huge asset managers, they face almost continuous, quite intrusive scrutiny. Lots of data submissions, constant meetings, direct engagement.
High impact, high scrutiny.
Exactly. Whereas smaller firms, like your typical independent financial advisor practice, they're supervised proportionally. They mainly comply through periodic regulatory reporting, annual returns, detailed self-assessments. It's about allocating regulatory resources where the biggest risks lie.
What's really interesting here, I think, is that supervision isn't just one single activity. The source materials mention 3 distinct forms they use to sort of gather intelligence.
Yes, these 3 forms are basically how the FCA keeps its finger on the pulse and spots emerging risks. Yeah. First, you've got proactive supervision.
The day-to-day stuff.
Pretty much. That's the steady, scheduled work. Ongoing engagement, regular compliance reviews, planned meetings, and a continuous flow of data the regulator demands. It's the constant background monitoring.
Okay, then there's reactive supervision. Sounds like when the alarm bells ring.
Precisely. This is when they react to specific red flags. Maybe a sudden spike in customer complaints about a firm.
Right?
Or a whistleblower report detailing serious issues. Or even weird market anomalies that suggest something's gone wrong operationally, or maybe even, something dodgy is happening.
Driven by urgency.
Exactly. Investigation kicks in fast.
And the third type, which I find quite interesting for setting industry-wide standards, is thematic reviews. How are they different?
Thematic reviews are quite powerful. They are targeted deep dives into one specific issue, or maybe a potential harm, but across lots of firms, dozens, maybe hundreds, all at the same time.
Like a sector-wide health check on one topic.
Kind of, yeah. For instance, they might study how firms across the industry are handling advice on transferring defined benefit pensions, or maybe how they're treating vulnerable customers.
Important stuff.
Hugely important. It lets the FCA spot these wide-reaching trends, assess risks across a whole sector, and then potentially dictate changes before a massive crisis happens. It's crucial intelligence gathering, and it often leads to either new rules or even widespread enforcement action.
That transition makes perfect sense, leading us straight to Pillar 3. Enforcement. This is the consequence phase. When supervision flags a clear, deliberate breach, well, the hammer comes down.
And the goal here is it's multifaceted, really. It's partly about deterrence, sending a message to the whole industry.
Don't do this.
Exactly. It's also about education for the firm that failed, and crucially, about trying to restore fairness for the consumers who were harmed. It's not just punishment for punishment's sake, it's correction.
What actually triggers an investigation? Is it always a customer complaining?
Oh, not at all. It could be findings from that supervisory work we just talked about, or systematic market surveillance picking up odd patterns. Yes, consumer complaints are a big source. Whistleblower reports, too. Sometimes it's joint investigations with other regulators, maybe overseas like the SEC, or even domestic bodies like the Securities Fraud Office. Once triggered, the FCA's enforcement division follows this very structured legal investigation process.
And the outcomes, the consequences, they're laid out in their rule book, the DEPP manual, right? Decision, procedure, and penalties. And the
Yeah.
penalties can range massively from basically a quiet word.
To effectively ending careers or businesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. On the lighter end, for minor breaches, maybe non-systemic stuff, you might see private warnings.
Behind closed doors.
Exactly. But once a breach is serious or it keeps happening, the public actions escalate quickly. You get things like public censures, formal statements saying this firm did wrong, published widely, and of course, financial penalties, fines, which can run into the millions, depending on how bad it was and how long it went on.
And for the consumer, probably the most direct positive outcome could be a restitution order.
Yes, that forces the firm to compensate the customers they harmed. That's restoring the fairness element we mentioned.
But the really heavy stuff.
That targets the firm's permission to operate, or the individual's ability to work in the sector at all. So, variation or withdrawal of authorization that restricts or completely removes the firm's license, or prohibition orders, which permanently ban specific individuals from doing any regulated job ever again.
That's it then. Career over.
Pretty much. It's a very serious sanction.
So we've covered the three big mechanisms: the filtering, the monitoring, the correction. But you mentioned earlier how it all ties together through accountability. And that's where the senior managers and certification regime, SM&CR, fits in. That came out of the financial crisis, didn't it? When it seemed like nobody was personally responsible for huge failures.
SM&CR is absolutely the glue holding these pillars together. It was a direct response, yes, designed to make sure that personal accountability couldn't just be shrugged off or passed down the line anymore. It's the buck stops here rule, basically, for finance.
So how does it actually structure that personal accountability?
Well, it creates really specific requirements for different levels of staff. Senior managers, the top people, they need explicit FCA approval just to get their roles. And they have to provide a detailed statement of responsibilities, outlining exactly what they oversee.
So it's crystal clear who's responsible for what.
Precisely. And if something goes wrong in their area of responsibility, they are personally on the hook for failing to take reasonable steps to prevent that breach.
Wow. Okay. What about the advisors, the client-facing staff who aren't senior managers?
Right. Below the senior managers, you have certified staff. This includes most people in client-facing roles, like investment advisors. Now, these individuals don't need direct FCA approval annually, but their firm has to assess them every year and certify them as fit and proper to do their job.
So the firm takes on that responsibility.
The firm certifies them, yes. And crucially, all employees, even people in, say, IT or HR, support roles, are subject to the FCA's Basic Code of Conduct. This sets baseline standards for ethical behavior. The message is clear. Everyone has a defined responsibility, and everyone faces potential consequences if they breach the rules relevant to them.
It really does crystallize the accountability inside the firm. Okay, let's just address the final piece then. What does all this mean for you, the person actually using these financial services? What's the safety net if, despite everything, a firm fails you or just goes bust?
Yeah, there are two really crucial layers of protection there for the consumer. First is the Financial Ombudsman Service, or FOS.
Right, FOS.
If you have a complaint about a financial service, bad advice, poor service, whatever, and you complain to the firm, but they don't sort it out to your satisfaction within 8 weeks,
You can take it higher.
you can escalate it to the FOS for free.
Yeah.
They act as an independent referee.
And they have real teeth, don't they?
Oh, yes. Their decisions are binding on the firm, up to a certain compensation limit. And here's the link back to Pillar 2, supervision. If the FOS sees repeated complaints or serious failings at a particular firm, that often becomes a major trigger for the FCA to launch an enforcement investigation into that firm's systemic problems.
Okay, so FOS is for disputes. What about the ultimate nightmare scenario, the firm goes bankrupt?
That's where the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, the FSCS, comes in. This scheme is there to protect consumers when authorized firms actually fail financially and can't meet their obligations. It's like a statutory safety net.
Your financial insurance policy, basically.
Exactly. So, for example, it currently compensates eligible clients up to £85,000 per person per bank if your bank fails. Similar protections exist with different limits for investment failures or insurance advice failures. This safety net is absolutely essential. It guarantees a level of protection, which helps maintain public trust and prevents widespread panic if a firm does collapse.
That really brings the whole framework together, doesn't it? You've got the tough entry requirements with authorization, then the constant monitoring, tied to that personal accountability through supervision and SM&CR, And finally, the consequences and safety nets backing it all up, enforcement, FOS, and FSCS.
Absolutely. The whole system is designed, or at least aims, to create a trustworthy, ethical, and stable environment for financial services. Authorization filters the unsuitable. Supervision promotes ongoing compliance using risk intelligence. And enforcement corrects the wrongs and deters future issues. Together, they're meant to uphold the integrity of the whole profession.
And for the professionals listening, the advisors, it really highlights that operating transparently, keeping good records, showing ethical judgment, it's absolutely fundamental, not just for keeping clients happy, but for keeping your authorization and, under SM&CR, potentially your entire career. The personal risk is huge now.
It is. The framework is there to ensure regulatory compliance and integrity. But maybe, just to leave you with a final thought, given that clear personal accountability under SM&CR, what's the ethical responsibility of an individual advisor? Is it enough just to give advice that ticks all the regulatory boxes, compliant advice? Or is there a deeper duty to ensure it's truly suitable advice for the unique, often changing needs of every single client? The potential gap between just being compliant and actually delivering real value, that feels like one of the biggest ongoing challenges in finance today.
Something powerful to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.